our 2026 Skill Builder Week 2 for our shaker tutorial. With this, I'm going to get my iPad set up and we are going to get right on into it. So this is a pretty easy design. If you've not done shakers before, they look a lot more intimidating than they really are. They're really not much of a challenge. There's a few things about them, and we'll kind of walk through as we go. But they're really not much different than a regular bag tag or bookmark or even a snap tab, really. They're pretty quick. They're pretty easy. The appliques can take a little bit longer for the applique ones, but it's just the time. It's not the difficulty. So with that said, I've got the design loaded to my machine. We're going to go ahead and get going. This is cutaway stabilizer in my hoop because some of the satins, this is kind of a medium weight cutaway. So I'm doubling up because I ordered a lighter weight cutaway by mistake. So I am doubling up mine. But if you have a heavyweight cutaway, you can go with one layer. And if you're using tearaway, I would just double that up as well too, just to make sure that you get the quality of stitches that you want on your stabilizer. Because we will have a couple layers of satin, so make sure that our stabilizer holds up to that as well. I'm going to be using vinyl for mine. With applique pieces, for the applique center, you can use fabric for the applique pieces if you'd like to. My recommendation is that if you're using fabric for applique, you're going to want to get a product called Heat and Bond. It's a double-sided fusible kind of backing, and it's great to help kind of keep those edges on fabric kind of clean as you're trimming applique pieces. So, but vinyl, if you've not done appliques before, vinyl is actually a much more forgiving place to start for appliques. Even if you accidentally cut a little bit of your stitching in an applique on a vinyl piece, you're going to probably be okay. With fabric, if you cut that piece and cut that stitching too far, it's more likely to fray on you and kind of pull away from the stitching. So if you're a newbie to appliques, start with vinyl first, get comfortable with it before you switch to fabric. That's just my recommendation on appliques in general. So with this one, like almost all of our projects that we're going to be doing for this, our first step is going to be placement stitching right on the stabilizer. So I'm going to go ahead and get that stitched out so we can see where to place our first piece of fabric, which will be kind of our backing. Well, the base of our design there. I shouldn't say backing, but the base of our design there. All right, so we have our placement stitches down, and that tells us kind of where to place our base fabric so that we can cover up all those stitches. So I've got my fabric cut, or this is vinyl rather, and I'm going to make sure that when I place this over it, that it covers up all of those stitches from that step. So mine's bigger than I need. That's fine. It's better to be a little bigger and not have to worry about it than cutting it too small. So for our next step, I'm going to go ahead and it's going to show us our placement for our next piece. So this piece we put down is going to be kind of the base of our whole design. And the next piece is going to give us a placement for our first applique piece, which is kind of the outline of that TV. So I'm actually going to switch colors on my thread just so that I can see a little bit better. Unfortunately, my eyes aren't what they used to be. And sometimes cutting dark colors on black vinyl, it's a little hard to see. So hopefully this yellow will pop on camera too so you can see it. So, all right. So we're going to do this, and this is going to be our placement for our first applique piece, which is the outline of our TV. And I wanted to kind of do like a horror theme for mine, but I couldn't find a lot of my stuff still packed up. So I kind of was slim pickings on my shaker bits and whatnot. So we'll see if my idea comes to life when we're finished about how this is going to look for mine. But it's all preference. And that this design too is great for if you've got some novelty prints that you kind of want to get used up and you want to use for. It's a really small piece for the center of that TV. So this is our whole TV here. We've got our placement stitched down. I'm using vinyl for mine. And I'm going to lay that again. It's bigger than I need it to be, but I want to make sure that this piece of material covers up all of those stitches that we just stitched for our placement. So this is just tacking down that piece of vinyl so that we can trim it away. I am going to be using, let's see. These are, when you're talking about applique scissors, you have a lot of different options that you can use. These are my favorite applique scissors. These are 4-inch Kai applique scissors. They're small. I can get in curves really easily, get those small pieces out, no problem. You also have an option, it's called a duckbill applique scissors, which I actually like these for areas where I'm worried that I'm going to kind of like snip into fabric too much. This kind of gives you a little more of a safety net. There's also these giant curved things that look like something out of a surgery suite, but I got these forever ago. I don't like them. I never really reach for them. I just kind of have them. But whatever you pick for applique scissors, you want to make sure that it's comfortable for you to use. These are another good option too, and I cannot even read that writing to see who made these. I think they're in my Amazon list that I have up. These are not my favorites, but they're nice and small and light. But I just find myself not really reaching for these a whole lot. But with appliques, kind of the biggest part here is going to be picking your scissors and what you're comfortable using. All right, so with this, our actual applique piece is going to be kind of inside these two lines of stitching. So this piece here for the TV. If your machine can handle multiple layers of vinyl and you want to make your life a little bit easier, you're not going to need to cut out this center portion. We're going to lay another piece over this. I did include it because some people, the machines that you have might struggle with going through several layers of vinyl for your applique. So it's totally up to you and what you think that your machine can handle. I'm actually just going to leave it on for mine because I know my machine can do it, just to save myself some cutting. All right, I'm going to see if I can do this. I try and do this on camera. Sometimes it's kind of hard, but we're going to see if we can do it here where you can see. All right, so with applique scissors, what I like to do is I like to actually go away from my non-dominant hand. So as opposed to cutting like you would for like paper, where you're just kind of cutting around, I find that you can get a little smoother cut if you actually kind of do it the opposite way. So just kind of going at the edge. Hopefully I'm on camera here and you can see. Get in there and you want to try and get as close to that stitching as you can without cutting it. It's okay if you're kind of far apart the first time and you have to take another pass and get closer. That's better than cutting away too much the first time because you really don't want to cut those stitches. And like I said, vinyl is a little more forgiving here than fabric is for trimming appliques. So if you are new to appliques, vinyl, even though it sounds crazy, is going to be easier to work with than fabric is. Like I said, this is kind of slow going for me because I'm trying to do it on my machine bed so that I can keep it on camera versus moving this back and forth from my machine to the table. But again, I'm just kind of snipping away from my non-dominant hand, so I'm going towards my left hand. I'm right-handed. And this is just a technique that I found. I don't know if this is even like the correct official way to use the applique scissors. Maybe it is, and I was just slow to figure that out. But this is how I found works the best. And I like these here too, because as I get into these curves, I can just snip a little at a time and not worry about cutting into those stitches. And if you are trying to do this with regular scissors, I would say Godspeed because that just makes it so much harder on you. These scissors I'm using here, these Kais that are my favorite, are about $13 on Amazon. I do find that they do dull on me after a lot of use, but it's okay. $12, $13. I will just replace them when it gets to that point. See how I didn't get so close on those pieces? And I'm just going to come back through and just clean those up and get a little closer. And just take your time with this. Actually, I will cut this centerpiece out just so I can show you kind of how to get those small pieces there. So if you've got a piece like this in an applique or another design that you need to get out, what you can do, as opposed to trying to dig your scissors in, is just grab a seam ripper. And be careful with this. You don't want to go all the way through. Just get under the one piece, and you might even just kind of pick at the vinyl for a second, lift it a little bit, and kind of get in there and get yourself a little slit to get started. And like I said, if your machine can handle multiple layers and you're not concerned with it, you could leave that centerpiece in. But I'll cut it out just so I can show you on that piece there. And I did cut my stitch a little bit there, but I'm using vinyl, so I'll be good, especially since I'm laying another piece over top of this. Like I said, it's way easier. Take it to your table. If you're doing this at home, don't try and do this on your machine bed because that's crazy talk. But here we are, making it happen. Right, and that is messy, but it's fine. So now I'll go back in and I'll clean up kind of those pieces that were rough. And sorry, I'm kind of off camera for that. And if you want to keep your backing fabric as that too, and you're using the same color for your base fabric and what you want your screen to be, you could just leave it there. But I decided, and then our next step would be placement. It's really kind of not needed on this design, but since it's a consistent thing to do on appliques, you're always going to have placement and tack down. So I kept it on this. This is just going to be another step to show us where our placement's going to be for our screen. All right, and then I've got my material for the screen. Like I said, I was kind of going for this whole like old school horror vibe, but I don't have the right bits. But I was hoping this kind of like green screen here, like, does anyone remember the old like CRT giant TVs with the screen look kind of green when it was turned off? That's kind of what the vibe I was going for. So we'll see if it comes to life when this is all together. And my thread is shredding right there. I just saw that. That was rude. Let's pull that out of there before it starts nesting on me, which I'll need to change thread colors anyway. So before this next step. So I'll just pop that out of there now. All right, so we do the same thing to cut out our screen. All right, trim that. So again, I'm going away from my dominant hand. I'm trying to get it close enough here on my machine bed that you can see. It's a little rough. I'll have to clean all that up, but that's fine. Like I said, it's better to kind of work your way in slowly if you're not confident with it than it is to snip too far. So I'll have a lot of bits to clean up here in a second. Yeah, that's rough. So I've got all these bits here I need to clean up. So like I said, I want to get as close to this line of stitching as I can without actually cutting into my stitches. And applique scissors are going to make that so much easier. I remember when I first started doing appliques years ago, before I was even designing, I was trying to use regular scissors, and it was like next to impossible to really get a nice clean finish on those because they're just too big and unwieldy to really get in there and get close to those stitches. Right, that side's good. Let's come around here and clean this up. And I do try to give kind of a generous satin width on my appliques so that it doesn't have to be perfect, but these small bits to get off there. All right, we should be good there. All right, so this is kind of the long part. We're gonna wait for these satins to stitch, and that's what's gonna take the longest part of this here. All right, so our next step is going to be kind of our antenna and our dials and all that. So I'm gonna grab like a light silver for mine. And then one thing I've figured out too, this is just my second time doing this on YouTube, is I'm hoping the chat feature is working. So I wasn't able to check that last time. Like I don't know if there's a button I have to push or something too. And if we hate the YouTube format, this is our second one. We've done it. We can always go back to the Facebook Lives. I just thought this was a better option. Oh, thank you, Maura. Okay, so we do have, it is working. We do have the option to go back to Facebook too. I just wasn't sure what the best format is because Facebook, unfortunately, like deletes the live videos after 30 days. So I got to move them to YouTube anyways, or else they disappear forever. So I was trying to see if, like, what is the best option for us to do this to make it most accessible to everybody. So we'll carry on with YouTube now, at least for the next couple weeks, and then we'll see how it goes. See more. I need to figure out the monetization thing too. I'm so bad at all this stuff. I'm not very good at making money sometimes. And I do apologize. There are several jumps there for the small parts of the TV, but we can't avoid that. I wanted to get the little lines in there for like the little speaker. All right, and now we're moving on to what's going to be the longest parts of the design after this, which is going to be our applique, like the satin pieces around the applique. So we have two long runs for those, one around the screen and one around the outside of the TV. And that'll be our longest time stitching. All right, so it's going to start with the screen first. So, like I said, I was trying to do this old retro kind of green screen situation, which may or may not work out the way that I want it to. Remains to be seen here. Find a good green. All right, we'll go with that. And I think I mentioned this last week, but if I haven't, I typically have my machine speed turned down to about 400 stitches per minute. And the reason being, if I haven't harped on this enough, is that with a lot of domestic embroidery machines, I'm meaning not multi needles that are made for like commercial production, um, the slower you stitch at, you've got less friction. It's going to create less heat, less wear and tear on your machine. And as a result, you're going to get less skip stitches. Your stitches going to look a little cleaner, a little nicer. Um, a while back, I actually did a patch comparison where I showed a patch, the outline of a patch is a satin stitch, is that wide kind of stitch that it's doing right now. Um, I did one at 400 speed and I did one at 1,000 speed, and you could visually see the difference in the quality of the stitching between the one that was slowed down versus the one that was stitching at 1,000. Now, some people, their machines do better with it. So if it's great for you, awesome, keep doing what you're doing. But I have noticed that. So if you start getting kind of dissatisfied with the quality of the stitches you're getting on certain things, try cranking that speed down and see if that helps. You're going to get less thread breaks, less skip stitches, and it's just going to look nicer, a little more polished. I noticed that the most probably on satins like this, that thick outline stitch that you're getting, and also on fills, which is that where the whole area is stitched inside. Like I don't notice it quite as much on just outline runs and things like that, but with it skipping stitches and things like that, but it makes the most difference here. And the one thing I have all my pieces cut too. I am using clear vinyl, or I will be using clear vinyl rather. So my clear vinyl here, there's two different kinds of clear vinyls that you can purchase for projects like this. One is PVC and one is TPU. Now I could not tell you the chemical differences between the two. Honestly, either one will work. Um, it's the nice thing about using clear vinyl and embroidery is there's not going to be a huge difference in things. What you're most concerned with is going to be the gauge of the vinyl that you're using for clear. So this that I'm using, oh my gosh, I want to say this is 20, like, so you either can buy the clear vinyl by gauge or by millimeter. So gauge, I'm going to recommend between 12 gauge and 20 gauge. Anything like thinner than 12 gauge, you're likely it's going to perforate through, which means it's going to just start tearing on you. Anything thicker than 20, you're going to have a hard time kind of getting through that. It's going to be thick for your machine to get through. Some places actually list it in like millimeters or microns. I'm not really sure. But you're going to be looking from 5 to, I want to say 20 is kind of how, if you're looking at it, if it's measured that way when you're going to purchase it. But most places use gauge. So again, 12 to 20 is what you're wanting for a gauge. Um, whether it's TPU or PVC does not matter for this. The difference is going to be like TPU vinyl is more malleable, it's softer. It tends to not hold wrinkles as much when you are sewing with it, or if you have to turn a project kind of inside out. But with this, we're not turning anything. We're not going to be bending this and folding it. So it's going to be okay, regardless of the kind of vinyl that you have. So don't get too wrapped up in that. Where is my, there. All right, so we've got our screen stitched. We are now going to do the outline of the TV. And I have a little wayward stitch up there from before when my machine first started. And that's going to bother me. I'm going to be afraid that it's going to get caught. So I'm going to trim that real quick. That's a thing too. If I'm doing a design and I have jumps that I see are going to be in the way of, or a loop thread for a tie off, I'm actually going to trim that kind of as I go so it doesn't get tangled up. You don't have to worry about trimming it later. That's just my preference. But back to the clear vinyl conversation. So TPU is the more malleable one. If you're sewing, this does become a little bit easier. If you are doing, I've got a couple designs that do call for specifically TPU vinyl, and that's the slap bracelets that are like a shaker slap bracelet that I have because it is softer, more malleable. And I think on that design, I give a very specific gauge that you need to get for that. And I have wet bags as well. So again, that's the only time that in embroidery on my stuff that it matters for PVC to TPU. Other than that, just grab what you can get that's the cheapest. Just make sure it makes gauge and you're fine. Like, don't worry about that too much. I've even heard some people, now I have not done this, and I'm not sure what the gauge is specifically, but some people have taken like the packaging that some bed sheets come in, like that clear vinyl packaging, or like the shower curtain liners. I haven't done it, so I'm not sure what vinyl it is, but that's also an option. And you can kind of test that out and see what works for you with that. Otherwise, you can get clear vinyl. A lot of online shops have it. I know Michelle at Singing Design carries it. Natalie at So Hungry Hippie carries it. And they both have various weights and kinds so that you can pick from. I know Natalie at So Hungry Hippie also has like printed clear vinyl, which is kind of cool. Like she's got ones with little hearts on them, stars. So you can still use those for shaker things too, and it's fun. Another thing too that kind of comes up with shakers. So because clear vinyl has obviously no backing on it, it's just straight up plastic. You're not going to want to put these under any heavy stitching. So the reason that this goes on actually after the satins is because there's no backing to this. Every time the needle goes in, it's creating a little hole in this, right? And the more of those that you get, the more likely this is to perforate and tear away. So that's the reason that I lay this down afterwards. So we just have one pass of stitching going around. So it's not going to tear away on you. Because even if like you can stitch it under the satin and it's nice and clean, you don't see that extra line of stitching on top, that's great. But over time, like that can become more brittle and just tear away on you, especially if you've got all those stitches. Because you can see as this is going for the satin, how many times this is actually going into the vinyl and how many holes that's making. And with vinyl with the backing or fabric, you're good. It can hold up to that. Well, most of them. Um, but with a clear with no backing, that's nothing. It's a piece of plastic. And what I will see too with appliques, not all vinyls are great for appliques, especially if you've gotten some of these fun novelty prints, like some random shops on Etsy or Amazon or whatever, where they just kind of print this vinyl. It's not really a super dense or high quality vinyl. So it's not great for applique pieces because just like that clear vinyl, even though it's got a backing, it's more prone to tearing or perforating away, which means that you're getting this, like these pieces will start to lift up because it's actually torn up away from your stitches. So, and I have seen that in my group and other groups too, that people are like, why is this separating? And it really has to do with the quality of the vinyl. Um, I know that you can, the vinyls that shops I have purchased from will tell you kind of flat out in the listings typically if it's appropriate for a satin stitch. Now, I'm not saying that you should never buy novelty prints or things like that, but just keep in mind the project that you're using it for too. I've got like a whole shelf of like really fun novelty prints over there that I just keep for kind of simple projects that doesn't have heavy stitching, like maybe card cases, notebook covers, things that I know aren't going to have this heavy dense stitching going over it. So it's not likely to perforate. But that is just me and my preference. I just know how some vinyls are going to behave better than others are. So just keep that in mind if you have that with some of your novelty prints. Maybe just do a test stitch of if you were to do a test stitch of like a built-in font on your machine, typically those are going to be satins, and you can get an idea of, is that vinyl that I'm using, stitch an H down on a small piece of that vinyl and see, is that actually holding up to the stitches? Is it tearing up? Can I see all the holes being created? Before you spend time and stitch an entire project to see your vinyl's kind of pulling away. I am using, this is all Diamond Dust from So Unique Designs, and it actually does hold up really well to satin stitching. But for other ones I'm not sure about, I would just do a little test first. All right, so we are up to, and I've got another loose thread right there. Like I said, they drive me crazy as I go, so I tend to want to trim these as I go, just so they don't get trapped under anything, especially since now we're getting ready to add clear. I don't want it to get trapped under there. All right, so our next step here, I do have a placement stitching here for the clear. I would recommend before you do any of the stitching for the clear piece, match the color that you used for the screen outline here. So I'm going to go back to the green that I was using, and that way it's going to kind of blend in and you're not going to really tell that it's sitting so much on top of the stitches. Some of my shaker designs do not have a placement step for the clear, only because it takes up like the entire design. It's kind of obvious that, you know what I mean? Like the whole thing's a shaker. So you don't necessarily need a small section for placement. So don't panic if you do it. Just check the steps, see if there is one. And we're just stitching over that satin there. And then I will place my clear. All right, so I have the placement down. We're ready to place our clear vinyl down just on top of that. And again, I got that loose thread. All right, so I'm gonna lay my clear vinyl down, make sure that it covers up all the area that's gonna be our shaker area there, covers up all our placement stitches or the design. And we're gonna run the next step. Probably need to change my needle. It's been a minute. So it's getting a little dull. Yeah, see, there it is right there. I need to change my needle, but my needles are all packed away too. So we're gonna make it work here with this. Don't be difficult. Let's go back a few stitches. Don't be difficult. This is the last bit of heavy stitching I'm gonna do here. Just so my needle will hang on. And I would recommend too, I didn't mention before, but when you're doing a shaker, put a fresh needle in. That's what I should have done. But like I said, my needles are all kind of packed up in boxes still. So that does make it a little more of a challenge. All right. So from here, I am going to have to make you a little seasick because I need to swing over to the table so that I can show you how to get all these bits in. So I'm going to get this out and then we're going to take my phone out and we're going to come over here. So let's see if I can do this without making anyone. All right, let's see. All right, are we seasick? All right, let me put you up here. All right, are we good? We're in place. All right. We made it. All right, so we're here at the table and we need to add the shaker bits in. Do not take anything out of your hoop. We're not done with that yet. We just want to add shaker bits in. So from here, I like to grab, if you've got like chopsticks or something, that makes life a lot easier. I'm gonna reach across here. I've got my old. What I like to do is grab some chopsticks or something, just something where you can kind of get a separation so that you can kind of dump those bits in. The one thing about shaker bits is I'll say glitter is actually kind of counterintuitive for the most part with these because static electricity. If you just fill this with craft glitter, what you're going to end up with is a bunch of glitter that is just going to want to stick to this and not shake. So if you are going to use glitter, what I recommend is getting like a heavier glitter that's like a shaped glitter. If you can see on here or not. something that is like where it's got a shape to it versus these small pieces, because these small pieces here will just stick right to that. Some people can say that you can take like a dryer sheet and kind of like rub it inside the clear vinyl for a minute, and that will help kind of stop some of the stick, but it won't stop it entirely. So I actually like to use clay pieces, even like nail art pieces. I found them at Target. I have found them at Michael's. Like this, I got these little bat ones that I have. I got these at the Target dollar spot like a year ago. And these are great for it too. I know Michael's has a bunch, but I feel like you're going to get the best result with using these kind of clay bits versus using just your regular craft glitter. So I had good results with like shape glitter or like heavier glitters, but not the kind of generic glitter we all think of that we all hate from craft projects, but something a little more substantial. And it just makes it a little bit easier. So with mine, like I said, I wanted to do like a little horror theme. So, and I also like to kind of mix up the shapes and sizes that I use too on shakers to kind of get it a little more where it actually gets that like shaker portion. So it moves a little bit. So what I like to do is I like to, if I'm using several different ones, I like to add them a little bit by little bit. So it's kind of incorporated together. So I'm going to start here with a few coffins. I'm just going to drop them in there. That's it. Drop them in there. Kind of use your chopsticks, move them around. I've got some little ghosties that I'm going to put in there. Same thing. I'm just going to go little by little. And how much you add is totally on you and what your preference is going to be. Some people like to really load them up. Some people like to have fewer in there. They feel like it shakes better. And I'm going to grab, I've got these little ball things here, if you can see. Like I like to balance shapes and sizes when I do it. Just my preference. I'm just going to dump a few in. And again, I am just kind of going in there. I use my chopsticks, if you can kind of see, just to kind of move things around. I'm going to go back and add a few more coffins. I'll add a few more ghosties. And then I'll see if I like it. And if I do, then I'll be done. If not, I'll keep adding more until I am happy with the amount that I have in there. Let's see. All right, let's take a look. So this is where I am right now, if you can see through the glare there. And I'm actually pretty happy with that. I kind of like that where it is. So it's enough that it should be able to move a little bit. Another thing too, I got these on Amazon. They're the same thing as these little ball things, but they look a bit bigger. So they're nice if you want to actually kind of create some separation between the layers of vinyl to kind of help things move a little bit. And I think those that I have back there might be glow in the dark, or I could be making that up, but we're going to add some in. Just a couple. I could be wrong and they're not glow in the dark, but it sounds like it'd be fun if they were. So we'll find out, I guess. Just add a few in. All right, and then use my chopstick to kind of mix them around where I want them to be. And that's it for adding those. All right, so now we have to go back to the machine. So I'm going to put this back on the hoop, and then I'll swing the camera back over there. All right, and like I said, I'm sorry for the back and forth on this. Let's see if I can do this without disconnecting anything. Sorry, bear with me here. Aha, we're back. Okay. All right, so we're now back on the machine. And the last thing we need to do for the shaker part here is just stitch that part closed. I find these don't tend to move too much, but if you're really worried about it, kind of keep your chopstick handy. That way you can stop your machine and you can shove them down in there if you need to. But I find typically they don't move enough to worry about that. And maybe I should rethread the machine. That might actually be helpful if I thread. Oh, it is threaded. Look at me. I need to wear my glasses. Well, we'll thread it again for good measure. All right, so we're just going to go through and it's going to stitch. I need to change my needle. We're going to stitch that hole closed. It's okay, buddy. We're glad you're here. You made it. All right, so now we just need to trim up this clear vinyl. And my machine thread cutter has been kind of wonky lately. Sometimes it's not cutting on me like it should be, which is annoying, but all right, so I'm going to trim up those loose threads and I'm going to trim that vinyl down. The nice thing about the clear vinyl too is that it kind of hides mistakes when you're trimming. So you don't have to worry quite as much when you trim this out about being as neat because it kind of hides it. So take your applique scissors and just run it around again and just trim up that excess vinyl. And like I said, any wonkiness with the clear will kind of just be hidden by the time it's said and done. You won't even notice it. And now I got myself stuck up there. All right. There we go. So our shaker bit is done. All right, so now we just need to add the backing to our design. So we're just gonna flip it over and we're gonna add our backing fabric, our backing material. I'm just gonna use vinyl on mine. The one thing I mentioned, I think on the snap tab ones too, is I will use felt a lot of times in the back just to save up material. So it's not so much. Yeah, more if you don't want to do the clear vinyl, like you can just skip it. Just skip the vinyl steps. So you'll just skip the last 2 steps, 3 steps on this one. If you don't want to do clear vinyl, and it'll just be like a regular applique TV. All right, so from here, if you need to go ahead and secure this down with tape on the back. My piece is big enough, I'm not really that worried about it. Watch me regret it in a second, but pretty confident we're good there. I'm just gonna put that down there and I'm gonna switch to the thread color that matches my backing, which is black. And we are gonna stitch our backing down and then we're ready to trim it out and add hardware and we're good to go. I have like 5 spools of black thread going because there are various amounts left on the spool. And I've got this one spool that barely has anything left that I keep using for like very small areas of black so I don't throw it away. I don't want to waste it. Let's see if my needle hangs on here. I had to dig out my shaker bits from a box tonight because they started with the basement stuff, didn't come over here, and now we're stalled for reasons unknown. So I'm like, I'm not going to keep putting this off and waiting. So it's kind of like going to be a TBD because once they told me, once they get it started, it could be like up to 2 weeks to get the flooring all ripped out and replaced. But like they start and stop and start and stop. It's frustrating. Um, I don't know, but I'm just going to keep holding this off if until I get a definitive timeline. So as far as I know, unless I'll hear something this week about next week's, which is our card cases, which I did actually already stitch out. At least like a, oh yeah, because I already sent them to everyone. I don't know where the other one went, but oh, it's right next to it. So yeah, so we have card cases. Hopefully we'll get to this week unless I hear something different. So we've got like a little snap card case, but I put a clear vinyl back so you can put like an ID back here along with your cards on the inside. And then just a simple card case too. But this is a 4x4 size. The other one is going to be a 5x7 and bigger just because it's like a foldable kind of snap wallet. I can't make that fit in a 4x4. So we'll have that. And like I said, hopefully they will let me know what's going on. So I can move forward with my life. I feel like I'm like being held hostage in my basement right now. All right, so we are ready to trim this up and add our eyelet. So again, I'm going to have to make everyone seasick. I apologize, and move everybody over to the table. Look away if you get seasick. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right, we're back here. We made it. I tried to make that fast. All right. So here now, I'm going to take a second and clean up my mess of beads and stuff so I don't knock them everywhere. Because knowing me, I will accidentally hit this and they will just go flying. And then I will have to cuss on camera for everybody because I'll be very upset with myself. So let me get this out of the way real quick, just so I don't knock them everywhere. All right. And I just knocked something else over. It's fine. It's all fine. All right. So here we are. We've got this. Now we can go ahead and unhoop everything. So go ahead and pop that out of your hoop. And now we need to trim. Just make sure that whatever you're doing here, the scissors that you're using to trim your final thing are nice and sharp. Mine are slowly getting more dulled. I need to go get them past week or so. They're not doing so great. I like to trim about a 1/4 inch away or so from my line of stitching. And it's a little easier to kind of hide a wonkiness. Also, as you cut around, turn the vinyl, not your scissors. And that's going to help you get some smooth curves in there without kind of the choppiness. So again, turn the vinyl, not your scissors. Don't worry about getting too close. And also, this is where actually having your stitching in the same color as your vinyl will kind of help with any wonkiness here. If maybe you're not the straightest cutter, I am not the straightest cutter. So it kind of helps hide any flaws. One thing I would advise against is kind of going back over the same area. Like say you have an area that you're worried it's a little uneven and you want to fix it. Think hard about that, because it's kind of like if you ever cut your bangs when you were a kid and you were just going to take a little bit off and trim it up to make them even. And then before you know, you have no bangs left. That's kind of what happens. So just keep that in mind. It's okay. Like mine is a little wonky here. You can see I don't have it even. This is off. This is off. This is off. But look, you can't really tell, right? So unless you're using a contrasting thread and you're really looking, you're not going to see any of those like small inconsistencies. So don't fret about perfection. A lot of my testers are way better at trimming than I am. And where are my good? I have so much stuff packed up that it's running my life. All right. I think I have these back here. This will do. All right. So I'm going to be using, my eyelets are 3/16 of an inch. If you're using metric, it's 5mm is the conversion there. I'm going to be using my crocodile to cut. This has the convenience of having a hole punch on it, as well as the setting tool for eyelets. If not, if you buy an eyelet kit online, it will come with a punch that you can use to punch your hole, and it will come with a setting tool as well, typically. So if you don't have a tool, a lot of these come with it, and these honestly worked just fine. I actually used them for years until my friend Amy of Off With Her Threads pretty much was like, how do you not have a crocodile? And she sent me one because she said that she was tired of watching me use archaic tools, I think is what she said. So that's how I ended up with the crocodile, but it's worth it. I love it. I appreciate her and I appreciate this. But if you don't have this, don't fret. Just get one of the cheap sets on Amazon and it's fine. All right, so I'm going to go through here and I'm going to cut a hole right where I had that placement line. Just punch a hole through here. And then I like to trim up these loose threads that you get before I add my eyelet. This scissor's way bigger than I want to use. I actually have little thread snips, but I think they're in a box somewhere. But I want to get those just trimmed up just so I don't end up stuck in my eyelet. All right. So, and of course, I don't have a black eyelet or anything like that handy. So how about white? Do I have a gray in this box? I don't. All right. White is going to have to do. It's fine. All right. So I'm going to add that to the front. And most of the eggs will come with a backing piece too. I'm just going going to add that on the back. And if you're using a tool like this, you're going to go face down like this. So the pretty part of the eyelet's going to be face down on this. But on this, it'll be the same thing. I just need to flip it. Just going to pop it in there on my crocodile, get it lined up, and just give it a squeeze. And now my eyelet is set. So from here, you've got a lot of different hardware options. You could turn it into a bookmark if you wanted to by adding a tassel. You can get a beaded wire or a wire ring and turn it into like a luggage tag situation or put in your bags. My beads and wire tags are all, of course, packed up. Imagine that. My life is packed up right now. But do my tassels and stuff out still. Of course, not in a good color that I'd like to use, but all right. But you have lots of options for your hardware. So again, you can turn a bookmark, grab a tassel, and you can make tassel with yarn if you want to. Or these are pretty cheap on Amazon. Get a big pack of those. Even a ribbon. You've got some nice ribbons, fun bookmarks. You can get a wire ring. You can get a gate ring. One of these guys, put it on. I like the wire rings. I can add beads to it, and that's fun too, especially if you've got some kind of theme beads to go with what you're stitching. You can do this. You can do a key ring. It's totally up to you. Options are kind of whatever you want to make of it for your bag tags. So, but see, shakers are not hard. We've got, you can tell with the glare, it's kind of hard to see. Can you see them shaking around in there? So, and again, how much they shake depends on the size of your design, how much you have, or the size of the piece you're using, how many you put in there. But it's just kind of play with it and see what your favorite is. I like to have kind of a healthy amount, but not too much that kind of obscures the back. But again, that's just personal preference. So you fill as much shaker in as it makes you happy. So, all right. So hopefully that's it. This is our shakers. So hopefully that was helpful. We'll be doing our next one for the card cases. Like I said, I will let you know as soon as I know for sure what kind of a holdup is with down here. Hopefully we'll get it this weekend, but I will let you know as soon as I know and get that scheduled. I always try to aim for Sunday nights around this time. Just it's kind of easier. It's kind of after dinner for most people. I know different time zones a little bit different, but football's done now, right? So hopefully I'm not competing with too much too, time-wise. And I do have all those threads to, those jumps to trim up, but that's it. So I will hopefully see you all next Sunday when we do this again. And if not, I will let you know as soon as I do know a time and day. And I will also get week 4 designed to you this week as well. So we're kind of a week behind for stitching, but I will definitely have the week 4 designed to you regardless. So I want to see you doing a NASA one. I want to see the NASA theme TV. That'll be super fun. Show it to me when you're done. I'm excited. All right. So have a fab week, everybody. And we will be here next time. All right. Bye, everyone.